Well, hey, it's Zoe, and I'm here with Alvaro Ramos. And we were just having a conversation about how to pronounce his name. And most Aussies are troubled by the rolling of the R's, I think, whereas that's pretty easy for a French-speaking Canadian like me. In any case, Al is here, and we're here to talk about business leadership. And Al is incredibly experienced when it comes to business leadership and business success. He's been in the business space for 30 odd years of successful business coaching and 21 years where he set up and grew his own professional services firm, joined the big leagues for a while, then went out on his own as a coach, and has really been focused on helping small business be incredibly successful. Some of his clients have been small businesses, emerging IT businesses, to Cisco, where he flew over regularly to the US. No doubt we'll hear a little bit about that. But really, Al's focused on three amazing things: profit growth, business value growth, realization of that value. And today we're going to talk about the secrets of what makes business work. So from a leadership point of view, this is where the nuts and bolts really turn into moolah. So welcome, Al.
Thank you, Zoe. It's good to be with you. Thank you for having me along.
Well, when I first met Al at a Brumbies game, we were in this corporate box and we had an amazing conversation about rewards and recognition amongst businesses, all while the Brumbies were playing. I can't say that we paid too much attention in the second half. I was so engrossed in what you had to say about that.
Yeah. Now, I must admit, I'm more the round ball man, so I get a little bit puzzled as to what these guys are actually doing with the touching the ball and all that sort of stuff. So I didn't miss too much of it, so it was all right.
What is round ball? What is that?
Football, the real football.
Oh, like soccer.
The one you play with your feet.
Okay.
So there you go.
Glad I asked that question. I never would have guessed like round ball. What is that? Tennis? Volleyball?
Yeah. The real football, yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So I gave a broad overview of your journey in business. Just give me a little bit more detail. How did you get started and where have you ended up?
Yeah. So it was a curious beginning. I remember driving my vehicle to the Australian National University, and I'd been offered entry into a bunch of different subjects there, and I had no idea what I was going to do. And I must admit, I turned up to the economics faculty, and I said, look, I did okay at school, so let's go and do economics. And I turned up, and they said, look, you've got to do a second major. I thought, well, why? That requires more work. That's less time on the soccer field and at the disco dancing. Anyway, long story short,
you make yourself sound like you're from the 70s, Al. Come on.
Well, indeed, and proudly. Anyway, and the choices that they had included accounting and statistics and a bunch of political sciences and so forth. And I said, well, what's everyone else doing? They said, accounting's pretty popular. I said, yeah, put me down for that. So I started off my economics degree with an accounting major, and as time progressed, I found that economics was a little bit waffly. It was difficult to grasp, and accounting was pretty straightforward. 2 + 2 was always going to equal 4, and those principles pervaded the whole subject matter. And I thought, look, I'll pursue that. And so that's how I started my accounting degree, actually, as a qualified accountant. I started with Deloitte, and ironically, at the end of my professional career, I finished with Deloitte, having sold my business to them. So I'll give you a bit of rundown in between that. But so I started off as a traditional chartered accountant, and I found pretty soon that the accounting bit and the compliance bit, the accounting bit tends to look historically at things that have happened, and the compliance is mind-boggling. There's just so much complexity, and it changes so much and so often. It didn't tune my guitar particularly well, and I was very fortunate that I had a boss. I started with Deloitte, and after 3 years of qualification, moved on to a small, very entrepreneurial accounting firm, and the boss there was very much focused on growing business, on marketing initiatives, on the entrepreneurial spirit, and really promoting and attracting those type of people. And so he put me on as his special projects man, he called me, and gave me an opportunity, and that really opened up my eyes to where I could take my career within the accounting realms. Much more around helping businesses grow, performance management, improve the profitability, develop the strategy of what direction they should take things in, and so forth. So that was the beginnings. And then back in those days, there wasn't an awful lot of formal areas you could turn to actually learn the techniques, the resources, the tools, the processes of business strategy and performance management advice, certainly from what I could find. So I tried various different initiatives like marketing boot camps, and I actually ended up joining the Tony Robbins Mastery University program, where that was an eye-opening experience and gave me a lot of skills around connecting with people and understanding what made people tick. And
did you do the fire walk, by the way?
I've done 4 of them. So yeah.
Oh.
So it's been an interesting journey. Yeah, at each of his programs, he'll often put in a firewalk as part of the analogy of leaving your barriers behind, and conquering things that you otherwise would have thought that you couldn't conquer.
Just as a distraction, did anybody ever burn their feet while you did it?
Oh, indeed. Yeah, they
Really?
had medics there, and people with hoses at the end of the firewalk, and look, effectively what he does, he gets you into a pattern of thought and a pattern of performance where it seems to go beyond the mere physical, and if you fall out of that pattern whilst you're doing the walk, all of a sudden you get burnt. So there's a lot more complexity to it, but it was quite interesting. And having done 4, as someone who likes to just check things and make sure, 4 was a good number to do. But I don't know that I'd do many more. But anyway, we'll see how we go. Yeah, so basically that gave me some interesting skills in the area of what makes people tick, and I also found another tool called the Instinctive Drives, which is a personality profiling tool, and it gives you insights as to what is the recipe that brings the best of you to the table, whether it be, because a number of these personality programs tend to look at you in a role at a particular point in time, whereas the ID looks at you as a person coming to a relationship, coming to a job, coming to a sport, coming to friendships. So it's more about the individual you rather than the role that you or any of the roles that you play. So that was a really interesting tool, and I became accredited in that. So I took on quite a lot of experiences as part of building my toolbox of expertise and capability and resources. And it took me probably 5 or 6 years to actually get to a point where I felt, time to burn the accounting boat and move to the other side of the river and become the advisor and the consultant and the facilitator. And then progressively, the coaching realms, became more clear. And I've been working with small, medium-sized business, but basically, private enterprise for, the following sort of 20 odd years, 25 years or so. Yeah.
So what's curious about what you shared about your journey, which I haven't heard before, was, the Tony Robbins stuff, the Instinctive Drive stuff. That's all like classic life coaching, personal development coaching. How important is it in the work that you do as a business coach to incorporate that self-awareness component into the business practice?
It's key, and one of the things that you asked me to look at, and we'll discuss later on, is what are the key ingredients of success that I've found over time. And really, any success starts with you, the individual, and your own ability to understand what makes you tick, and therefore what are your vulnerabilities, what are the areas that are likely to bring you undone. Because business is like any other part of life. It's going to serve up very significant challenges at times, and your ability to master your emotions in those moments and maintain your resilience and your determination to get past whatever served up is pretty critical to business success. Add to that a little bit of luck, and that's a pretty key ingredient to what I think supports anyone, whether you're being in a big corporate environment, in a government environment, or in your own business, being able to sustain success.
So on that then, Because you've specialized in small business, though you've worked at the big end of town as well as in small biz. Why have you settled on small business as a key focus area?
Well, there's a story in that. You were saying before about having worked with Cisco. So the guy that actually developed the instinctive drive system is a close friend of mine. And after I became accredited, I was weaving the ID as an integral part of not only my own team, but so that everyone was much more aware of who them at their best look like and what they needed in order to bring the best of themselves to the table, but then also understand that about each other. So what it did, it raised the relationships to another level where you're much more understanding of the differences between people. So rather than differences becoming barriers, they actually became opportunities for leverage. And so, to bring that to a client relationship made a lot of sense, because if I knew that someone was, very much a meticulous, detailed person, then the way that I needed to communicate how, they needed to undertake particular actions and initiatives was different to a person who's much more big picture, let's momentum based, let's just get on and do it, and let's pioneer our way through. So therefore you're able to accommodate the way that you actually present information and support in tune with that person's optimal sort of recipe. And so Paul got an opportunity to open up in the States, and of all of his consultants, there was only a few of us that were actually in business and advising business. So he felt that he probably should take people that had some of that sort of commercial business acumen along with the ID knowledge with him to open up the opportunity. And so I was privileged enough to go and spend 2.5 years, flying backwards and forwards from Australia for 4-day weeks to work with the senior people in Cisco and help them understand and use the ID. But I guess also it gave me real insights as to what the big end of town do and how they do it, and some of the challenges and issues. And the irony was coming back that the problems were exactly the same as what small business, that I had in Deakin were encountering, other than the zeros at the end of the transactions were significantly greater, and there was greater complexity because obviously their teams spread across the world and so forth. But really, in essence, the problems were very similar. Anyway, I was flying back from one of the trips, and I was getting to the 2.5 year mark, and I'd realised then that I'd done enough to actually build credibility in a new brand that we'd created by having Cisco on our CV, and that really I was helping Paul grow his business at the expense of mine by not having that time back in my business. So I decided at that 2 hours into one of the 14-hour trips back home that's it. I've had enough, and I had pre-warned Paul, so I sent him a text saying, mate, this is it. This is the last trip I'm doing. And I thought, well, I've still got 12 hours to go. What the heck am I going to do if all of a sudden this big gap of time is going to come available to me? And I guess I'm a big believer that success leaves clues. So I was able to reflect back in my career and things that I particularly enjoyed, and looking at some of the small business people that even today I'm still dealing with, that I met back in the 80s, and their business was nothing more than a blank sheet of paper where they walked into my office and said, Al, we want to set up a consulting business, or we want to set up a restaurant, or we want to set up a building construction business. And we worked with them to actually develop that. And then as I progressed into my business advisory and coaching journey, they came with me. And so I also reflected back on their lives and some of the choices that they'd been able to have because of the success we were able to work and develop together in their businesses. And suddenly that became a currency that I became much more aware of, that small business is a very, very tough gig. The money that those people spend is their money. It's the money that doesn't go onto their dinner table if they pay it to you. It's the money that doesn't go to the education of their children if they pay it to you. So they're very judicious about where that money goes. So in terms of us selling our services to them, particularly advisory services, it is difficult, and you don't get the same payback as you do working with the bigger end of town. But I must admit, the extra currency of having a real effect and impact on not only the business of these people, but more importantly, their lives and their families,
Mm.
and seeing that they could send their kids to better quality schools, seeing that they could have, go off and acquire homes down the coast, and other choices that they had because they were successful in business, and that they appreciated and valued the support I'd been giving them on that journey. So, a lot of them have stuck with me for 21 years was my longest coaching relationship until after
Wow.
after he sold his business. So can you imagine, that journey of that you go through all the peaks and all the troughs and all the challenges that are involved in that business. So it's like you own a piece of that business. So it's very, very rewarding.
That is a rewarding. That's a really long-term coaching relationship. That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
So in all your experience then, like you've seen many different businesses, big and small, what do you think is, well, if we can get the secret of success, if you like, everybody's looking for that, what is the recipe that people can apply to their own businesses to make things successul?
So, look, I don't profess I've got that secret. Otherwise, I probably would be sitting on the Riviera on my new boat. But the reality is that my experience has identified 5 key ingredients, 5 critical success factors, as I call them. And the first one is get you right. And I'll explain that in a moment. The second one is know and deliver your difference.
Yep.
The third is tune the radar, preparedness versus prediction. The fourth is people are your drivers. And the fifth is build and extract value. So let me explain a little bit more deeply. So
yeah, that's good.
Get you right. So get you right is where I think everyone needs to stop, reflect, look in the mirror. And the first bit is staying empowered. You really do need to maintain emotional resilience and motivation. I mentioned it earlier on. And you need to work out what that means for you. Whether it be, having a regular, sort of gym program, whether it be, and this could be either or and, having a group of people, really positive people that you can turn to and that can provide you, the support required when in good and bad times. Whether it be, going off and doing yoga, so each person has different things, and you need to know that. You need to know what your recipe or your formula is for being able to build your that capability of emotional mastery, because that's one of your biggest vulnerabilities as business progresses. One of the things I highly recommend is go and do the Tony Robbins courses. He is amazing at being able to take complex psychology and sociology issues and be able to convert them into readily understandable and palatable techniques, tools, and processes. You just need to look beyond the big blustering American, hoo-ha and all the hype and all the rest of it. There's real substance in his techniques and in his processes. And so, and if that doesn't work for you, there's a multiplicity of other resources available. So, get that emotional, sort of vulnerability under control is one thing. The next one is stay passionate. So, when those of us that have set up business, start up a business, it's not something that you just sort of, come across and you sort of think, oh yeah, I'll do that. Usually there's some burning fire within you that, you want to go and change something. You want to, change the world or make a difference to people, or, so I think one of the things that's important is tap into that. Really work out why you got into business and what is it that really tunes your guitar and makes you enjoy that whole essence of being your own boss and getting out there and influencing people and helping people and contributing. And I think that's something that you need to revisit quite regularly. So that's where that whole purpose and, purpose and vision comes in, really understanding what you're trying to achieve and why you're trying to achieve it. The next one is know your gaps. So as part of getting you right, know your gaps. And one of the first things is that, when you go into business, a business is nothing more than a vehicle to get you what you want in life. It just happens to be that vehicle that you've chosen. So one of the things that you want, that you may want in life, may well be, to grow an organization that impacts the world, or it could be something more modest, like, effectively give your family better choices in life. Well, either way, one of the enabling resources is your wealth. So one of the first things that I say to people is, let's find out what choices you want, because most of those choices can be converted to financial consequences or financial funding. And let's work out where you are today on your wealth versus where you need to be, and let's work out what that gap is. And as part of building the empire, let's look after that gap first, because I think that what you find is once you actually are able to release your concerns and your thoughts from, making sure that you have your wealth squared away, is very liberating when you want to go and then build the rest of the empire. So that gap is pretty critical, because in fact that, with the work that I do with clients, I always start with that and say, okay, well, now let's come back to the business now. Let's work out what are the levers that make the business work, and what targets do we need to set for each of those levers in order for your business to deliver on your gap in this. And it's not about getting to retirement. It's about freedom of choices. So that's a gap that you need to understand. The second gap is your capability gaps. So most entrepreneurs just have this great idea or really technically competent in a particular area, but really when they sit back and look in the mirror and reflect, what do they understand about marketing and sales? What about human resource management and leadership? What about, financial management? So there's a bunch of different skill sets that are required, capabilities that are required to be successful in business, that you don't have a choice as to whether you have them or not. You absolutely need them in order to succeed. So the question is, know your gaps and know where you can get support. So whether it be support to train you, develop you, whether it be support that you outsource or you bring people in, that's secondary. First of all, just let's work out what your gaps are.
I like that one about support. And it's one of the big mistakes I see a lot with CEOs, big and small, is that they try and lead alone. And it's just too much of a task these days. Things are too volatile and changing too quickly to be able to steer the whole ship without some sort of sounding board.
Indeed.
So I think it's pretty critical. So the elements of Get You Right were stay passionate, know your gaps. And what was the step number 2 that you had?
So the first one was stay empowered. The second one was stay passionate.
Yep.
The next one is know your gaps.
Yep.
And the fourth one, about getting you right, is stay on top of it. Okay. So what I mean by that is you need to make sure that right from the outset you dedicate structured performance management time. So that, you've often heard the old glib saying about working on your business, not just in it.
Yeah.
So that's what this is about. This is about scheduling time in your diary. And I usually say to clients, schedule it for a year ahead. Just book it out in your diary. And so then you work your life around that time, and let's set some structured process for how you become efficient in that time, to make sure that you work out where your business is coming from, what's been achieving, how that relates to your targets, and what are the insights from the assessments that you do, and then what does that mean for what we need to change in terms of the navigation for the month ahead, the quarter ahead, or the year ahead. So you need to make sure that you dedicate that time, and that makes a good platform for bringing in some help as well. And someone to think that's not caught up in the minutiae and the day-to-day quagmire of your business, that can actually provide a reflection at a higher level and challenge you about your thinking of how you run your business and what's actually happening in it. So that's getting you right.
There's a lot to get right in you.
Well, yeah, but I tell you what, there's a big jump forward in success if you get you right.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that's number 1. Sort yourself out. What's number 2?
Well, know and deliver your difference. So that's where, really, if you're getting into business, what's going to make you different? What is it that you're bringing of value that the marketplace that you're choosing is going to say, hey, I want you to do my work, not someone else. And so you need to invest some time and energy thinking that through and working out, A, who your target market really is, and B, why they should choose you over another. And once you get that clear, then you need to work out how am I going to deliver it so that there's a client experience that really reflects that difference. And so then you need to design and build that client experience. You need to communicate it. You need to live it. As the saying goes, if it's not affective, it's not effective.
Okay, so you need to affect others in order to have an effective result.
Yeah. So ultimately that what that does, it eliminates the need to sell, because your brand, the experience that you provide is something that's memorable to them and they seek out. And ultimately, you speak to most small businesses and you say, well, what generates most work for you? Where do you source most of your new work and new inquiry? And invariably, it's word of mouth. So you want people to go and talk about your experiences at the barbecue and at the kids' sports ground and so forth, and then as a result of that, you're nurturing your own sales force. And then I suppose it's really about managing the execution of the promise. So that's get your value proposition right, wrap a good client experience around it, and then manage the execution so that people trust you. That what you've promised is what you're delivering, and that requires things like offering obviously an excellent product and service as valued by your target market. So that's critical. Ensure that you deliver it. Your delivery people, so your team, are all on the same page. So there's consistency there, because we're only as strong as the weakest link. And then things will go wrong, but when they do, recover like a champion. Really use it as an opportunity to enhance the experience.
Yeah.
I think most people get into blaming and justification and excuse giving, and that just destroys the opportunity. Use that opportunity to really raise the experience for people that you recover like they would never have expected.
Oh yeah, I think you're right. It's so easy to default back to, wait, what was the terms of the contract, and what is the least thing that we have to do to tidy this up, instead of thinking, right, what's my client suffering right now, and how can I fix that? Because that's more important.
Yeah, I often talk to my clients about focusing on the lifetime value of your client, not on the transactional value.
Yeah, that's right.
So if you make a horrendous loss on this transaction, you've just made a phenomenal investment in the lifetime value.
Yeah. Okay. So that's number 2, know and deliver your difference. What's number 3, Al?
Okay. Tune the radar, I call it, which is all about preparedness versus prediction. I mean, we live in a time where it's just increasingly complex and difficult to know what the heck's going to happen. You look at what's happened in the last 5 years, and could we have predicted all of maybe any of that, let alone all of it? And I think it's only going to get more complicated and more difficult, and the whole sense of uncertainty is the new certainty and all that sort of stuff. So I think that the important thing is to really focus on what you know, and then have an ability to be nimble in being able to recalibrate your navigational directions and so forth. And so that starts with knowing your numbers, as I call it. So I wouldn't be an ex-accountant if I didn't bring numbers into it somewhere. And I suppose it's not only knowing the numbers, but the story they tell. And the first thing the first set of numbers that I usually say to people you need to understand are those currencies that I mentioned earlier on about that define your freedom of choices, because effectively that's what then defines high performance for you. So often you hear people talking about building a high performance business. Well, what does high performance mean? Well, in context of the business owner, it's about giving you those choices that ultimately you really seek as part of jumping aboard of this vehicle that you've chosen, which is called your business. So that's a good start, because in fact that then informs the performance targets that your business needs to hit, both in activity level as well as financial level. And I'm a big proponent of what we call activity-based management. So in other words, how do we convert all of the financial results that people often use to set budgets and measure performance, measure financial performance, back into the activities that people actually do, because that's what they really understand. So let me give you an example. So in our businesses, we sell skilled hours. So, if you can understand how much a decision is going to cost you in skilled hours, you say, okay, well, that decision is a 10-hour decision or a 10-hour a week decision. All of a sudden, that's much more understandable for you, the business owner, and your team than to say, oh, look, you've got to generate $10,000. An extra $10,000 this month. That can sometimes become a bit overwhelming. So I was speaking to a client last week, and he needs to put on a new salesperson, and it's a $125,000 decision. And
for the salary, you mean?
Yeah, for salary, super, all the other bits and pieces. So the number is a scary number for this guy. And so then I said, well, look, it's not really $125,000. I worked it out because I know, the average transaction value that he's able to get from what he sells. So I worked it out, and I said, look, so effectively what you're doing is that decision there, this guy needs to generate, 2,000 of, sell 2,000 of the widgets that you normally sell a week. And he said, 2,000? God, I'd expect him to sell at least 4. I said, have you got the demand for that? Oh, I've definitely got 2 already, but to get another 2 wouldn't be that hard. I said, well, what would you do? Oh, I'd do this, I'd do that, I'd do the other thing. Right, okay. So the decision to put this person on is only 2. And you're saying you've already got that. You just shuffle around the demand you've already got. You bring forward some of the waiting list. He said, yeah. Oh man, that's taken such a weight off my mind.
Yeah.
So those numbers are really critical, and that they're numbers that are relevant to you. The next one, I guess, is to maintain performance transparency. And what I mean by that is that, when it's all good to set targets, but what's the actual result emerging, and why? What are the insights that we're gaining when we start to analyze the information that's coming back to us from the behaviors and the actual decisions that we are taking, and from that be able to sort of modify accordingly, our direction and our choices, both as individuals and as a team.
I think that's a really important one. And after having worked with Stacey Barr's work around key performance indicators, and her key premise is to track results over time so you can see the patterns. And when you have that pattern of points over a specific period of time, then you can see what the trends are and what the signals are. So you can run a business experiment, track the numbers, and see, is it working or is it not?
Yep.
And having that set up in your business makes it so much easier to know if what you're doing is actually working.
Yeah, indeed.
Just stabbing at it in the dark.
Yeah, indeed. But look, it's not usual. As much as that sounds like common sense, it's not usual. Like when I get an opportunity to speak to a new client, the first thing that we do is to say, look, let's do a bit of a diagnostic. Let's actually go into your business, and I come in totally cold, so I'm going to give you an independent view on how I see your business working. Can you provide me with these numbers and this detail and that information? Well, it should be about this. I said, where's that coming from? My gut. So it's curious that the things that are so fundamental aren't usual and normal, because people just get caught up in getting out there and doing stuff, but they don't measure whether they're doing the right stuff and the right volume of it and so forth. So yeah, those numbers are pretty critical. And then along with tuning the radar, then goes the whole creative and proactive planning. Actually investing time thinking about where do we want to go and why, and what are the things that are happening around us. So part of the radar is not just looking internally at my own business, but more importantly at what's happening in the broader marketplace. And we've seen that how challenging it's been for many industries now, this whole digital disruption. I remember when I was at Deloitte, we did a study on digital disruption, and it was enormously scary to see, how quickly industries are going to be, or have been, and are going to continue to be impacted and transformation forced upon them. So you need to be aware of these things, particularly as a small business, and be able to then have options for navigating around it, because you're not going to stop it. So therefore, let's see what we can do about this event emerging. So looking at scenario planning, being able to tap into your industry body and organizations that they use in order to do some economic research and other research that's going on. You need to keep your ears glued to the external marketplace and how that's impacting on not only your business but also your customers, because they will change. Competitors are going to emerge in places that you never even knew existed. So you've got to be aware of that, and that's where the planning comes in. So the concept of the old Japanese 10-year plan, I think, is more like a 6-month plan now. You've really got to be
Okay.
So that's Junior Radar. That's number 3.
Junior Radar. I like that one. People are your drivers, hey? So tell me about that.
So this is where I spin it around and throw it back to you, you see. Well, basically, you need good people using great systems and processes to deliver outstanding results.
Yeah.
So it's about, do you have systems and processes? And more often than not, in the private businesses, particularly the smaller side of things, there's such a reliance and dependence on the owner. It's almost part of their ego, part of their identity, that everyone's got to come to me for answers. Everyone relies on me. Well, you know what? You don't have a business. You got a job with a bunch of people helping you do your job, and you don't have a realizable business. So what gives business value is that the more independent that it is of owners, the greater the value starts to scale. And so systems and processes are critical. So they support people doing good work, and putting time and energy into your people, mentoring it, developing them, creating environments that enable them to bring the best of themselves to the table is a critical part of being able to be successful in an enduring sense. So you need a compelling and attractive offering for people. What's your purpose, vision, and values? Because they are magnetic forces for attracting the right sort of people and retaining the right sort of people. Plus, then having effective recruitment processes and retention processes, and the one that is so close to my heart, and involvement. People need to feel involved, not just that they're doing a job. They need to feel a sense of ownership about what it is that this business is doing and how I'm contributing, and how that I'm actually doing something that is meaningful. So I'm about 2/3 of the way through your great book, Loyalty. So I'll give you a plug here.
Good on you.
And I love your tribe concept. I think that's a fantastic way to explain what it is that I think a successful business really needs to achieve, is that sense that people feel belonging there, and they feel that they're important and that they're contributing and making a difference, and that the whole business is actually doing something that's making a difference. So I certainly commend your book to your listeners.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that sense of belonging it's a huge human need, not only just a business need. And I think businesses are modern day tribes, if you like. And so when we have that sense of home and sense of community in the place where we work, we're more likely to do really good work there. So it increases commitment and contribution. And I think it's up to the business owner to foster that and to treat everybody in their business world as a member of that community that they have stewardship for.
In fact, I'll touch on that later, because I think you wanted me to maybe run through very briefly the team incentive and engagement program that I think we were talking at the Brumbies about. So I won't dwell on this one much further.
Okay.
I'll wrap it into that other one.
Okay.
So the final sort of critical success factor I guess have seen to be a powerful winning strategy is build and extract value. So along the way, you've got to make sure that, you are cognizant of what builds value in your business, and I usually say, start with the end in mind. Let's set a date by which you're going to sell your business. It may well be that you are the buyer of your own business, that you want to keep going, that you've enjoyed it so much and you want to keep going and take it to another level. But putting a date is a fantastic way of being able to say, well, now let's work backwards and see what it is that we need to change about the business model and the business processes and the business methodology and decision making and all the other ingredients that go towards making this business successful, so that on that date we can achieve the desired outcome. And so then on top of that, you then need to look at, well, who would buy this? Because in some regards, we've got to be cognizant of what they would attribute value to. And that helps us be able to backwash the value ingredients and criteria that we build into our model, so that on the date of sale, it's attractive to the people that we think that would be likely buyers for us. So that's a very useful way of giving you some guideposts for not only taking your business in a direction, but doing it in a manner that's actually building intrinsic value into it. And then along the way, you've got to milk the cow. You've got to make sure that you achieve success, and that success transfers to personal wealth. I've seen so many businesses just grow and grow and reinvest in themselves. And I remember at a client who was, it was about $100 million business, and it was a phenomenal business. He felt that any day of the week, Al, this thing will be worth $15 million to me. And I said, what if it's not? And he felt that I was being a negative fireman, sort of putting water on his fire. And I said, no. I said, my role is to be your devil's advocate. That nothing would please me more than we get to sale date and I've got bad news for you. And he says, what? He says, you've made 20 million instead of 15 million. But the point is that what if you don't make the 15 million? Yeah. What else can we do along the way? And this is a guy that has just put all of his eggs into that one basket and built this phenomenal business. I finally, it took me 2 years of convincing and nagging, but I've convinced him to start drawing out money and putting some into property and into super and into various other nest eggs. And we got to the end of time when he was ready to sell. And the business was so large that it really was a very small pocket of market that would be potential buyers for this size business. And he got an offer of $2 million.
Oh.
He just about had a heart attack on the spot. Anyway, we spent 18 months and we got him $4.5 million.
Oh.
But fortunately, we'd built up $8 million plus of other assets in other nest eggs. So he got his $15 million. So, it's one of those, it's a story that I just tell time and time again because it's one I lived, and so it's important to make sure, and for two reasons. One is that, you do build those nest eggs externally so that you're also protecting yourself in the event of, some failure and so forth. But the other thing too is that I find that business gets fat and lazy. Just like human beings, the business gets fat and lazy if you leave too many assets, too much cash, too much capital in its environment. So I say to clients, look, you remember when you first started your business or when you first bought it, you ran like a lean, mean, machine, and you had to run on the smell of an oily rag, because 90% of small business people go into business undercapitalized. So what I'm trying to do is that, and you succeeded, you've achieved what you've achieved. I said, so what we need is that mentality of lean and mean, but without the stress. So what we do is by milking the cow, as I call it, we're taking some of the capital out, putting it to work elsewhere, but making the business really support itself on less capital and on less resources, and therefore you need to be much more astute. You need to make decisions much more effectively and much more timely and so forth, because you don't have the fat of having, like this particular guy, he used to have $8 million sitting in a bank account at any point in time, and that was in the old days where it was a check account, so it never even paid him interest.
Yeah, right.
So I got him to put that money into a cash management account. I said, well, I've earned my accounting fees for the next 10 years. What? But anyway, so that's my 5. So just to recap very quickly. So the number 1 is get you right.
Yep.
Number 2 is know and deliver your difference.
Yep.
3 is tune the radar. Be prepared versus predicting. 4 is people are your drivers, so you really need to invest in them and support them to be their best within your environment. And number 5 is build and extract the value along the way as well as at the other end.
I think that's a good one. And so for your last piece of advice, rewards and recognition, which started our conversation a few months ago, what's your best advice around that? Like, I hear there's a lot of discussion with me and my colleagues about how do you reward staff? How do you recognize staff? And what's the best way to approach that?
Yeah, so if I had the definitive answer to that, again, I'd be multi. But look, I remember having an experience many years ago with it was a podiatry clinic, and they came to me to say, look, we want to sell, I don't know, 2% or 5% of the business. I thought, what do you want to do that for? They said, because we really need people to have skin in the game so that we can go off and have holidays. And I said, I'm sure they're going to be compelled by that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I said, do you realise, that the limitations that actually places on you as owners? Because all of a sudden, whether it's 5% or 0.5% or 50%, you're now accountable to other people. As they're owners, you can't just bully them around. You got to make. And anyway, long story short, I said, what about if we considered a reward system, some sort of incentive program and so forth? Anyway, we massaged ideas and so forth and came up with one which we call the team incentive and engagement program. And to me, the success was the engagement bit. And it's only in recent times, I think I sent you a YouTube link a little while ago, and then very surprise. Here's me thinking that I was sending you something innovative and new, and I read your book, and there it was on one of the pages about Dan Pink and his puzzle of motivation. So I certainly commend people to have a look on YouTube and just look for Dan Pink and some of his YouTube videos, because effectively what Dan says is that that there's a dilemma. And the dilemma is the mismatch between what science knows versus what business does regarding motivating and rewarding people. And he came up with the research that science indicates that depending on whether you're trying to promote and reward mechanical skills or cognitive skills, and mechanical skills tended to correlate that the higher the bonus, the more widgets that you could produce. But in most businesses, what we're looking for is the cognitive skills. We want people to bring, to not leave their problem-solving brain at the door when they come into work. Because it's quite ironic, that all people, they pick up their bag at the end of the day. They leave the premises, and almost within seconds, they're in problem-solving mode, fixing this, fixing that, making decisions, blah, blah, blah. And then they come into work, and it's almost like, I'm here to do my job. But hang on, what about all these problems that there are around the place? Oh no, my responsibility is to put them in a little wheelbarrow, take them to the boss's door, and just empty my wheelbarrow at the boss's door. Why? Why do we create environments like that? So that challenged our thinking in this team incentive and engagement program to say, well, how do we actually provide an environment that people can come to work as equal contributors to identifying problems, coming up with solutions, having a go at implementing those solutions, reviewing the outcome, and then maybe recalibrating or celebrating because we fixed it.
Mm.
And so that became, a pretty key part of this incentive program that we set up. And it was transformational. It wasn't an improvement to the business. It was transformational. And what we did was we'd have a monthly get together with the team, and we kept it simple. So first of all, there was three key drivers in this particular business. The volume of appointments that they had, the average value of each appointment, and the gross margin that they were able to generate from each appointment. Overheads, all the rest of it, that was in the owner's hands. The staff couldn't really do too much about that. So we just focused on what they could control or have an influence over. And so we then would measure, we've got a target there. How do we go? We succeeded. Fantastic. Okay, you four in the corner there. Here's a tool that is a really good tool for assessing the componentry of success. Why don't you guys use that and see what you come up with? Let's find out what we did well, because what we want to do is we want to make sure that we lock that in and consolidate that and build off that. Target 2, we failed abysmally. Right. Well, here's a tool for being able to brainstorm and diagnose what went wrong or what we think could have gone wrong, so that we can then do a little Pareto analysis and find out what's the 20% that if we fix is likely to give us an 80% chance of improvement. And from that, we then coach them on developing implementation plans. But it was all about raising their capability, raising and expanding their opportunity to actually do meaningful things within their work, not just their technical stuff that they did. They were all over that. But there's other aspects which, enhanced their capability and made them better people. So the interesting thing that science found in the Dan Pink video was that there were three key components to true motivation. One was autonomy. In other words, self-direction and ownership. So, we stumbled across that. We said to these guys, look, what we want you to do is actually work as buddies. And here's, all you need to do is put a plan of attack to us. Here's the issue. Here's how the impact, and here's how we can improve it. And here's some actions that we need. We need some investment, or it could be time and resources, or it could be just time. The leaders, and this is part of the coaching that I had to do with the leaders, was that they had to let a few go through to the keeper, because sometimes they could see that, no, that's not going to work. I said, well, maybe you need to sort of ask some questions and get them thinking, and then see what happens. And we did. We obviously they weren't sort of things that could have brought us undone, but by the same token, there was instances where things did cost the organization. But we saw that as an investment, because then we'd go back and we'd review, what did we learn from that? And what could we do next time? And so, the team became better and better problem solvers, but they also became more unified, because they were working together to find solutions. They really started to recognize that no one of them was better than any of the others, that all of us together were much better than anyone could be. And it was interesting when performance became an issue for one of the team members, and we had to have a discussion around how we're going to deal with that. Now, interestingly enough, the team member didn't turn up to one of the meetings, and so it was all slather. And so I had to facilitate some discussion around, so whose responsibility is this? Is it the owners, or is it all of us? Because it's having an impact on all of us. And so, we then explored how we could identify the gap in this person's capability. And then we found someone else that was really good at that particular process or skill. And we said, well, what about doing some buddy work? I'd love to. And so what happened was we set up some buddying processes, and so the team was helping each other to become successful, and we were using the stars to bring the other guys up, not to actually separate out and become the unicorns. So it was quite an amazing thing. I mean, that said, the biggest challenge of this whole process was for the leaders, because it forced them to step up. They had to let go, they had to trust. They had to coach and mentor. And so all of those are new skills that they had to develop and garner. So it was a very rich initiative that many years later I found out why it worked. when
Dan Peek told you.
I saw Dan Pink's video. So he was talking about autonomy. The next one was mastery, which is all about the capability development.
Yeah.
And the last one is purpose, doing things that matter. And look, Zoe, I remember clearly that going into one of the meetings, and before we actually started, we just had a bit of a chin wag, and one of the staff members goes, "Al, come here, come with me, and she dragged me out to reception, and there was it was a lolly jar, and I says, "See that? That was my idea. That was my idea. I came up with that idea at such and such, and la la la."
Oh,
and
no,
you should see.
my connection has gone funny.
Hello.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. You just went warbly for a little bit. You got excited about the jelly beans.
Yeah, exactly. It was probably the passion of the of the sweetener. Anyway, so this young lady was all excited because not only that it was her idea, but the amount of comment, the amount of gratitude from patients when they came in. And surprised that they had this, the Jaffas and she used to mix it up and put minties in occasionally, and it was something that really gave an experience to the customers coming in, and she felt responsible in owning that, and for her, all the plaudits were coming back to her, but that I came up with this idea, So it's interesting when we look at rewarding people. Rewards takes different currencies. For some people, it is financial, and for everyone, it is financial to a certain stage. You need to make sure that you've got the fundamentals covered, but then it starts to take a different route for each of us. And for that young lady, the fact that she was listened to, that she was supported in the implementation, and not only that, but the customers loved it. It was almost like, oh mate, it doesn't get any better than this. How good is this place? So she was critical and important to the success of that business, and they celebrated those things and retained their team for a long period of time.
Al, I think that's a great story about not diffused, but shared leadership, when you can get the team engaged and looking at the system of a business and how they can all contribute to that. It's not a lot of business owners do that, and they tend to see very narrow segments of their business or compartmentalize different aspects of it instead of looking at how things integrate and therefore how everybody can affect that. And I think you're well ahead of your time, mate. So well done on that.
Yeah. It was a good fluke, but no, it was very satisfying. Just because just for the owners, they used to. Well, he used to work 6-day weeks. They'd take 4 weeks a year, if 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there, and within 18 months, the business was made. So he was working 3.5 days a week. They were taking something like 12 weeks off a year, and the business was 30-something% more profitable.
Now that's a good outcome, just from learning how to trust and empower and coach and mentor your staff. Love it. Al, thank you so much. You've been a wealth of information, and I loved all your stories. I think I'm quite inspired to knuckle down on some of the things that I don't have quite in place in my own practice. And thank you so much for being here to share your wisdom.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, Zoe.
You're welcome.
Have a good day.